Hi, everyone. Judge Andrew Napolitano here for Judging Freedom. Today is Tuesday, September 3rd, 2024. Alastair Crooke is here with us. It's almost as if this is a Monday with our schedule today. Alastair Crooke is here with us and will be with us in just a moment on what is the U.S. supposed to do when Israel lies to it. But first, this. A divisive presidential election is upon us, and the winner is gold. Let me tell you what I mean. Since 2016, our national debt has grown a staggering 70%, and gold has increased by 60%. Do you own gold? I do. I bought my gold in February 2023, and it has risen 33%. You've heard me talk about Lear Capital, the company I trust. Let me tell you why. Recently, Kevin DeMerit, who is the founder and CEO of Lear, assisted the FBI in discovering a nationwide gold theft ring. And because of Kevin's good work, the FBI caught these people before they could steal anymore. That's why I have been saying the people at Lear are good people. They believe in America. They believe in their product, and they're honest to the core. So take action right now, my friends. Call 800-511-4620 or go to LearJudgeNap.com. Protect your savings and retirement before it's too late. 800-511-4620, LearJudgeNap.com. Remember, hope is not a strategy, but gold is. Alastair, good day to you, my friend.
Good day.
How manipulative and how dangerous is the manipulation of Israeli reaction to military strikes? In other words, when the Israelis always claim they are achieving their goal, and they stopped Hamas, and Hamas didn't get anywhere. They stopped Hezbollah. Hezbollah didn't achieve anything. And you and I know that that's spin. Does the American government recognize it as spin?
Yes and no. I mean, I think what you're referring to is that I think it was a weekend or so ago, there was a sort of piece of theater played out when, if you like, Hezbollah reacted to the death of Fuad Shukr, who was assassinated in Beirut a little earlier. And it was a carefully calibrated response. And Israel's response to that was also quite carefully calibrated. It didn't attack beyond 5 kilometers across the border, the Lebanese border. Instead of, it wasn't attacking in the far north or in the Bekaa or anything. So it was obviously both sides signaling to each other they didn't want all-out war, now, at least for now.
Right.
And so when it was presented, of course, it was presented as a huge victory. You know, Israel preempted Hezbollah. It shot down nearly all of the rockets that were fired. Actually, the rockets were the decoys for the Iron Dome. They'd reversed the Iranian one, where the drones were the decoys and the missiles were the real thing. And this time they did the rockets as a decoy, and the drones, the attack drones, were the ones that actually struck, as I believe they did, into Tel Aviv. So they changed it around. But then when it's presented, we knocked it. They caused no damage. The Hezbollah, we put 100 planes in. We destroyed thousands of missile launchers over a period of 7 hours. Actually, it was 20 minutes, but it was put out as 7 hours, and thousands of these missile launchers were destroyed. And we dealt with that. Little damage done. It was a feeble effort by Hezbollah. It wasn't. It was a carefully calibrated affair between both sides. And Israel know that because they played their part in this. But when it's put out in this way, it gives the impression, and here's the danger, and this is what the point of what I was writing was about, was, you know, it suggests that there are opportunities, that there are possibilities to take out Hezbollah that are easy, just as they did then and as they did, to, if you like, to the Iranian missile launch on the 13th of April. Oh, it wasn't, it was so easy, there's no problem. So we can seriously contemplate either taking out Hezbollah or even attacking Iran. And we'll see what's happening because the air campaign, massive air firepower, will be successful in destroying the tunnels and the missile launches of Hezbollah. And then we can do the same with Iran. They have to do them in pair. I remember being told long ago, because the Americans had a sort of doctrinal point that any attack in Iran had first to eliminate any threat to Israel from Hezbollah happening in retaliation for an attack on Iran. So it gives you this sort of false confidence. And this is what happened in 2006. Many people said, look, you go and do it. Bomb Hezbollah, destroy their tunnels and everything. We'll swap notes with you, and then we'll do the same to Iran. We'll bomb Iran, and we will then attack Iran. And this is how it can be done. And the point I'm making is that it goes on and on. Air firepower has not been successful for decade after decade after decade. And even in 2006, Rumsfeld was saying that very clearly to people who would listen and say, look, it didn't work. It didn't work. It worked a bit for me in Afghanistan. It certainly didn't work in Iraq. And it hasn't worked generally. Air firepower, killing of civilians in large numbers by massive bombing has not been a strategic success at all. And he recognized that. But there are others at the time, even in 2006. And of course, then Israel attacked in 2006 Hezbollah with massive firepower. And of course, they hit almost nothing. And it was being claimed as a successful tactic. Then it was a winning ploy. And it turned out that they bombed empty spaces.
Let me try and draw some takeaways from what you just said. The Israelis, as do a lot of countries in wartime, are as concerned about public relations as they are about military strategy. The Israelis are drastically, radically, overwhelmingly losing the PR war. So when they claim, after a 20-minute theater, as you call it, 2 Sundays ago, that they prevailed, is their audience Joe Biden and the State Department? Is their audience the American public? Is their audience the Israeli public? Because outside the American government and public and the Israeli public, nobody's going to believe a word they say.
It is intended to try and convey to the key listeners in the United States that, they can be successful in attacking Iran, because this has always been Netanyahu's objective, to engage the United States in an attack on Iran. And I think all of this showing that Hezbollah was not a threat to Israel, easily managed, was to sort of smooth the path for trying to push or propel the United States to join it in an attack on Iran. And why on Iran? Because this is the only way out. The walls are closing in many ways. In Gaza and the West Bank is really on fire now. And then in the north, it is just as it was, getting slightly worse all the time. The only way that Netanyahu sees out of this, and it's a way that he sees that has legitimacy, is to attack Iran. And then this will be, if you like, the pyramid will collapse as the summit of the pyramid is destroyed. But what I'm saying is it's a complete, the West, and it's not just America, goes on believing in firepower, even when the whole of warfare has changed. And this is the point I'm making. They just have not gone forward and understood that we are in a different world. A revolution of warfare has taken place. These, if you like, Iran and Hezbollah and others have missiles missile towns buried deep under the hills, automatic, that fire automatically through deeply buried, if you like, tunnels, that they don't have launchers on the surface, like the spokespeople were trying to say. They have deep tunnels. This is why I'm saying it's a real danger. I understand you're right. Winning narratives, popular, keep the spirits up is something. But if people start to think that you can deal with Iran by flying F-16s over it and dropping bombs on Tehran and the area, and that will not start something major, you're mistaken, because it will bring Armageddon to the region. The Iranians have sophisticated missiles that can hit anywhere in the region and beyond. Indeed, almost, I think, even up to Europe as well. So they've promised they would do that.
Here's someone that, we have mocked in the past, and his naivete about Iran is overwhelming, and he is the cheerleader in the American government for bombing Iran. Senator Lindsey Graham, Chris, cut number 3.
If you want the hostages home, which we all do, you have to increase the cost to Iran. Iran is the great Satan here. Hamas is the junior partner. They're barbaric religious Hamas. They could care less about the Palestinian people. I would urge the Biden administration and Israel to hold Iran accountable for the fate of remaining hostages and put on the target list oil refineries in Iran if the hostages are not released.
Isn't that naive? Bomb Iran oil refineries if Hamas does not release the hostages, for whose release Prime Minister Netanyahu has not engaged in serious negotiation.
Yes, completely. And, Iran have made it very clear to the United States, I think it's pretty clear, that if you like, oil and energy resources there's an attempt to destroy them, then they will react and they will destroy the infrastructure of energy in the rest of the Gulf area. And they will put a blockade on Hormuz, and there will be no oil coming from the Middle East to the West, and its economy will crash. So they advise the West not to do that.
Wow. Is U.S. military support for Israel unconditional in the literal sense, even if the American government knows that some of it is based on PR spin and outright trickery and deception?
Well, this does concern me, because I think, again, there are two layers to this issue. Of course, there are, just as there were in 2006, as I wrote, Americans, be warning to be cautious about this. And in fact, the commander of the NATO bombing in Kosovo, the American commander at that time, was saying, listen, don't even think of, bombing another country, a major country, unless you're prepared to put ground forces on the ground as well. It's not sufficient just to bomb it and go home after 4 or 5 days. It was 78 days in terms of Serbia. But I think there is that sort of sense of, if you like, caution. But what concerns me is if Netanyahu manages to provoke Iran. He's tried twice to provoke Iran. First with the killing in Syria, in Damascus, in the consulate of a senior general. Then with Hania at the later in Tehran. With these two things, a third provocation, maybe attacking someone more senior in Iran, would provoke a reaction. There's already been, I've seen coming out of some of these sort of channels in America, stop going for the generals, go for the ayatollahs in Iran. Well, if that happens, then there will be for sure a major reaction. And then the question is, can America politically stand back from it? They may want to. They can see what's happening. They don't want to be pulled in. But the political structures, the power structures in the United States, I can't see them standing back and allowing Congress to let these things pass in the Middle East without America being involved to defend Israel and to defend it to the utmost. So I think it's a more nuanced answer than just yes or no. So I think that America is probably, particularly at this time, and in any case, I don't think it's anxious to go to war. We've just heard Lindsey Graham extolling it, but I don't think that's a very wide sentiment. But I think the danger is, we all know that the power over Congress, that if you like, the sort of deep structures of foreign policy exist within Congress, make it very hard to see that even if the president wants to, will he be allowed to allow Israel to be destroyed or attacked in the central and northern parts of Israel with missiles, as would happen in a war with Iran, because Israel would be targeted by. They've made that very clear, and I made that clear too. They would be targeted. The whole of Israel would be targeted if there was a serious attack made on Iran. I mean, this is the Iranians really do have deterrence. People talk about Western deterrence, but the Iran has what I call a red pill deterrence, that if they're attacked, then Israel's over. I mean, that's their deterrence, and they say, don't attack us. That's their deterrence that they can deploy, and it is a serious.
Does the American State Department and Defense Department have a grasp on all of this as you've just articulated, or are they more Lindsey Graham in their attitude and understanding?
Well, and that's why I rehearsed some of those things. It came from a piece by Cy Hirsch in 2006. I mean, there were both views. I mean, there were people who thought it was great that Israel was attacking Hezbollah. Well, it wasn't. They lost that war. I mean, they didn't destroy the tunnels and they didn't destroy Hezbollah, and they suffered a great defeat. And I recall after it, Dick Cheney, I remember John Hanna writing about it. Dick Cheney was seeing Prince Bandar at the time, and he said, this is really terrible after, they were supposed to win that war. And, right. And Iraq was supposed to actually, and what Iraq war has done is to make Iran more powerful, and it was supposed to do the opposite. So, I mean, these were two areas where miscalculations came.
Here's a bit of a flashback to earlier in the summer, Israeli defense minister talking about the very things that you're talking about. Chris?
I'm standing here in Washington as Israel's Minister of Defense to say the following. We stand firmly behind the President's deal, which Israel has accepted, and now Hamas must accept. But let it be known that our war is not with the people of Gaza. Our war is not with the people of Lebanon. Our war is against Hamas, against Hezbollah, and their backers, the Iranian regime.
I don't think there's much truth in what he said about who his war is against. He slaughtered tens of thousands, maybe 100,000 in Gaza. The peace proposal that he said his government accepted, we know it didn't. But what do you think?
Oh, that's exactly right. You remember, I think I told you once on an earlier program, Ron Dermer had said, we cannot end it until we've completely not only demilitarized Gaza and West Bank, but de-radicalized both. And when asked, how do you de-radicalize them? He referred to the effects of the Second World War, on Germany and Japan and said, this is de-radicalization. So, I mean, I don't think they were just saying we have no, we've got no grudge against the people. They know, and they say privately, and they will say in Hebrew every day, all of the Palestinians are supporting Hamas. We've got to deal with the whole problem. And they also know that they have not succeeded in Gaza. Again, we have Major General Brick writing just, I think, today, saying, we've lost this war. Actually, the amount of tunnels we've destroyed is a few percent, but we're taking heavy casualties. And what's more, we're taking the casualties. We're exhausted. We will face collapse if we just are expected to go back and back and go on fighting in Gaza. Whereas Hamas is reconstituting, it's getting this is what Major General Brick is saying. They have got young men coming in and they are reconstituting their forces all the time. We are losing men and they're exhausted. And that's why he says, look, it won't be a success. We get out, it'll be a disaster. Everyone will see we failed, it'll be a disaster. But that's really, we have to sort of take the medicine and we have to accept this is where we've got to. Of course, this isn't the view of the cabinet and the majority, and you'll have seen those big demonstrations in Israel over this weekend. But don't be mistaken. These didn't come, if you like, spontaneously. We've been seeing for some time now as particularly the security echelon became more and more, if you like, disenchanted, of feeling disempowered, that they weren't able to stop what's happening, if you like. And they saw Ben-Gvir and Smotrich and the right wing proposing, that we need to actually go to a bigger war, and we need to. And they've just declared over the weekend. They've just declared now that West Bank is a site of war. Said, we're at war.
I have a two-part question for you. One, are you suggesting that the massive demonstrations and the general strike, which just lasted a day, were instigated by Israeli intel? And two, how stable is the Netanyahu government in light of these massive demonstrations in the past 72 hours?
Yes, I mean, let me just be clear. For the mass, I mean, all of the people demonstrating, they were doing this in absolute, good faith. It is a sort of cultural element. It is a form, if you like, in Judaism, that to save one is to save the world. And so that comes from the Talmud and the early oral Talmud, that you should save every Jew because by saving one, you save the world. So there was this very strong, genuine impulse to get the hostages back, the hostages, and including the ones that were killed just recently. But at the same time, senior people, I was quoting the head of Shin Bet, that is the security service, who was calling, and he said very clearly, the Herustat must call a strike. We must go to the street. We must simply get rid of this government. We have to collapse the government. And others were making, Etzion, former national security advisor, was saying, the only solution we've got, this is, if you like, the sort of secular world, the Europeanized Ashkenazi world, against the world of the sort of the Ben-Gvirs and the Smotrich, and what I call the rejectionist Jabotinsky group, the ones that want to establish the state of Israel on Israel. It's close to explosion. It's really an incendiary moment between the two of them, very close to violence. So I'm not saying that they got out there and physically organized it, but they've been encouraging, if you like, an attempt to collapse the government.
Right.
If you like, that's what the point of calling for the union to make a strike, people to go to the street and to have mass protest, was to try and bring down Netanyahu's government. And the reaction from the right in his government has been very tough. And people like Ben-Gvir said, I'm not ashamed to say we're using the power that we have to forestall any, if you like, deal in Gaza. He says that explicitly in reaction. And Gallant was alone in his call for saying it was outrageous and there should be a deal and the hostages must be released. He was attacked by all of the cabinet, viciously attacked by the foreign minister, by all of the ministers attacked him, saying that he was just, if you like, he was trying to appease the forces that wanted to destroy Israel. So it's really, it's the schism between these two, if you like, dynamics in Israel is becoming incendiary. And this is why I keep making these warnings, both, back to the United States and back to others, that, the only way out for Netanyahu at the moment is to escalate, is to go, and that's why we're seeing what we're seeing.
Here he is.
Under attack.
Here is Prime Minister Netanyahu yesterday at his incendiary, best or worst, depending upon how you want to look at it, but he's certainly defiant. Cut number 1, Chris.
We're asked to make concessions? What message does this send Hamas? It says, kill more hostages, murder more hostages, you'll get more concessions. The pressure internationally must be directed at these killers, at Hamas, not at Israel. We say yes, they say no all the time, but they also murdered these people. And now we need maximum pressure on Hamas. I don't believe that either President Biden or anyone serious about achieving peace and achieving the release would seriously ask Israel to make these concessions. We've already made them. Hamas has to make the concession.
I mean, that's basically a profound untruth, except that Hamas did kill the hostages. Everything else in there was a gross exaggeration or a deception. What concessions has Israel made?
Look, I don't care what you think of Netanyahu. I mean, he's not an attractive figure in many, many ways. But it would be a great mistake to think that he is alone and that there are not others that support him, right, and that there are not others armed forces that are behind him. There are at least 10,000 militia vigilantes that have been armed by Ben-Gvir and are ready to come down at the snap of the fingers of Ben-Gvir and the others and support him. Yes, he may be lying. He certainly doesn't intend to do a deal. And because he needs to take this to the next stage, which he hopes will lead into the final, if you like, Armageddon, if you like, battle that will bring down Iran and bring down all the forces against Israel and return deterrence to Israel. You may be skeptical. I think it'll end up with the destruction of Israel. But nonetheless, this is the plan, and it's unfolding, and it's now moved from Gaza to West Bank. It's still going on in the north with Hezbollah and gets more and more serious, and Israel loses more and more territory. But if you just dismiss him as a sort of someone who is lying and is not serious, we miss the point of how really, violent is the schism.
Right.
And Israel, could explode under these tensions. You saw the huge crowds on the street wanting the hostages released. And that's been, they've been devastated by the fact that those 6 were killed. Unfortunately, I've done hostage negotiations. And this is the basic rule. You start every hostage negotiation. The hostage takers tell you, if we detect any signs of an attempt at a military release, we kill the hostage immediately. And so we always, with those negotiations, had to be so careful. If they heard an aircraft that they weren't expecting, they heard an engine sort of nearby, they can just go and kill hostages. I don't think that Hamas was quite as trigger happy as that. But undoubtedly, the attempt to rescue them, the sense that they did it to preempt an Israeli attempted rescue, like on, I think it was the 8th of June, when 274 Palestinians killed and 4 hostages were released. So they decided to preempt that.
Right.
But this, I am sorry to say, it's it's an unpleasant fact of hostage life. But that if they think all hostage takers, when they suspect a military release is underway, will first of all kill the hostages.
Alastair Crooke, my dear friend, thank you. It seems like we've been discussing this for 2 hours. You've given us so much information, but it's only been 30 minutes, but deeply appreciated. And your analysis is spot on. All the best, my dear friend. We'll see you next week.
Thank you so much. All the best to you.
Of course. Coming up later today, Ray McGovern at 10 in the morning Eastern, Larry Johnson at 11 in the morning Eastern, Professor Jeffrey Sachs at noon Eastern, at 2 o'clock Eastern, Matt Ho at 2:30 Eastern, Lieutenant Colonel Karen Kwiatkowski. Judge Napolitano for Judging Freedom.